I know you all are feeling kind of anxious right now because we're going to talk about the nervous system. So we're going to subdivide the nervous system into two main branches, and then I'm going to talk briefly about the base functional unit of the nervous system, which is the neuron. So buckle up and let's get ready to learn. So first off, when we think about the nervous system, the first thing we likely think of is the brain and the spinal cord, so that central part of our body, right? That's why it's called the central nervous system. So the brain and the spinal cord refers to the central nervous system. And I'm going to relate this to the best sports coach you have ever had, the best sports coach. And I'm going to extend the metaphor throughout the entire nervous system. So best sports coach, brain and spinal cord. You can remember that it is the central nervous system. So it also starts with a C, which stands for coach. Okay? And let's think about the coach. Well, the coach is going to do several different things, right? He's going to kind of watch and gather all of this information about his players, and then he's going to tell his players to do certain effects, okay? So as the sports coach thinks about things, he is going to process and integrate all the information he either receives or sends, okay? So the central nervous system is the biggest processor and integrator of several different sensory bits of information, as well as deciding whether or not we should have a response to it. The key here is everything runs through the central nervous system. So in order for you to experience some sort of sensation, it's got to be integrated into the central nervous system. In order for you to do something, to think, to move, it's got to integrate into the central nervous system first. So every road kind of leads either towards or away from the central nervous system. So, what else is there in the nervous system? Well, there's the players. The coach deals with players, which starts with a P, which is part of the peripheral nervous system. So anything in blue, I'm going to draw as the peripheral nervous system. Now, the peripheral nervous system, although it's by itself, there are two main branches. So I'm going to say the peripheral nervous system here is going to deal with the sensory aspect, the sensory neurons, and on this side, it's still the peripheral nervous system, and I'm going to deal with the motor branch of the peripheral nervous system. Okay, sensory. Think of sensory. We are experiencing different senses constantly. So the sensory division of the peripheral nervous system will bring in information regarding stimuli that we're experiencing. This can be like hot, cold, pain, pressure, touch. It can be taste, smell, all the five senses. It's gathering this information, okay? And whatever information it gathers from these sensory neurons, it's going to obviously tell the central nervous system about it, right? Because this is the main processor and integrator. So all of the information the peripheral nervous system receives, it's going to send the signal towards the central nervous system. This is called an afferent pathway, which means it's going towards the central nervous system. Okay, so let's relate this to the analogy, right? We've got the coach, and he is sensing, watching his players, seeing how they are performing, right? And he's going to integrate all of that information. He's going to think, how can I make this team better? Okay. So he needs to make an actual effect on the players. Maybe he's going to tell them to do something specific. Maybe he's going to yell at them or calm them down, whatever the players need in order for the team to function properly. So let's extend the analogy. Say we receive an information sense that, you hit your arm on something, right? So you hit your arm on something and it hurts. So you want to pull your arm away from that. Okay, well, that information was received, that pain was processed by the central nervous system, and now we've got to move the body. Okay, so when we voluntarily move our body away from a painful stimulus, that is a part of what's called the somatic division of the motor division of the peripheral nervous system. Okay, so somatic deals with skeletal muscle movements. Why is it called the motor then? This branch of the peripheral nervous system? Well, motor usually means movement, okay? So it's going to have some sort of effect on something. So the somatic branch of the motor division of the peripheral nervous system deals with moving the skeletal muscle, okay? Voluntary motion. However, I just mentioned, hey, you sense that there's pain here. Say you stub your toe. You feel the pain, but before you even experience the pain, you pull your leg back because you don't want to keep hurting your toe, right? This is called a reflex. So this also deals with reflexes. But you may say, well, Mr. J, reflexes are automatic. You can't control them. You're exactly right. However, what makes it somatic is it's dealing with skeletal muscle movements. When you pull your foot away from a stubbed toe, you're still pulling your skeletal muscles back, but you're doing it without thinking. That's what makes it a reflex, but you're still impacting the skeletal muscle. So although the somatic division does deal with voluntary movements, it can also be a reflex, which will kind of be involuntary. Okay, so how can I relate this to my analogy? Well, the coach can receive sensory information and decide, hey, I need that player to play defense with their foot more at a 45-degree angle rather than a 180-degree angle where it's flat. Because if they play defense like this, it's going to help them lead another player to their left hand, perhaps, and help them play defense better. So this is a voluntary movement of your body that the coach is telling the players to do. Okay, so that's one extension of the analogy. Well, there's one more branch of the motor division, and it is called the autonomic branch. As the word entails, this is an automatic response, okay? So this is all dealing with involuntary motion or effects on things. This primarily impacts smooth muscle, and we'll talk about that here in a second. There are two branches to this automatic response. There is the sympathetic, and there's the parasympathetic. You may have heard of these before, and I want you to remember them as the following. If it is sympathetic, this is going to be your fight or flight response. So everything that happens in your body in order to run away from that bear that's about to kill you is going to deal with the sympathetic neurons being fired in the motor division to make something happen in your body. Whereas the parasympathetic is going to deal with anything regarding resting and digesting. Okay, when you're at peace, when you maybe are relaxing at home, you are resting your body and you are digesting your food because you're in a calm state. So you're going to absorb food and relax. Sympathetic is the opposite, okay? Before I get into the details of what they do to different tissues, I want you to remember this. Both of these branches of neurons, so say I say a sympathetic neuron or a parasympathetic neuron, they will go to the same tissues. So these innervate, they talk to the same body tissues. Okay? And they're going to exert opposite responses. So let me give you an example. Say you sense, okay, you receive a sense that there is a bear that's about to eat you. Your brain will process that and be like, that's dangerous. We need to get your body out of there. So it'll send a signal through a peripheral neuron, specifically a sympathetic neuron, okay, out to the body saying, freak out. We got to run away from this bear, okay? So what's going to happen? Let's say that it's a sympathetic neuron going to your heart. What do you think the sympathetic neuron will do to your heart? Well, it'll speed it up for one. It'll increase the force of contraction. So the sympathetic will stimulate the heart to pump fast and fast and fast so you can get more blood throughout your body, right? So you can run away. But once that stimulus is gone, say the bear walks away, okay, now you're fine. You're not going to die. Well, now the parasympathetic neurons will kick into place. So you'll sense that there's no more bad stimulus, right? No more bear. Brain will process that and say, hey, calm down. We're fine. We're alive. There's no dangerous stimulus anymore. It'll trigger the parasympathetic neuron to tell your heart to slow down. Okay? So they exert opposite responses depending on what the stimulus is. This can also happen with stressors like test anxiety. So if you have a test next period, your heart rate starts to increase, right? You start getting flushed, you start getting the cold sweats. All of those are sympathetic responses because you have some sort of dangerous stimuli, a test. And what's interesting is your brain can't really distinguish between a bear and a test. It's kind of crummy, right? Because you freak out in response to it. But if you want to trigger your parasympathetic, sometimes you can breathe deeply, relax, try to bring peace to your mind, so that parasympathetic will calm your body down. Now let me ask you this. If you're resting and digesting, your intestines are churning, right? They're moving food throughout the body, they're digesting and absorbing the food. So what's interesting is the parasympathetic neurons will stimulate intestinal contractions, whereas the sympathetic will decrease intestinal contractions, because when you're running away from a bear, you don't really need to digest your food. You're not too worried about that. You're worried about running away from the bear, right? So again, they exert the opposite effects. Now, how can I extend this into my coaching analogy? Well, maybe the coach senses that the player's not working hard enough. So he's going to scream at the player and say, hey, buddy, pick yourself up. Let's go. What's going on? Why are you so lazy? Get going. Which will stimulate the sympathetic division, right? He'll freak him out. So he'll be like, okay, coach, okay, I'll go. So his heart rate increases. He starts sweating. All of that is a sympathetic response. Or maybe the coach notices, hey, this player's just playing a little stiff and he just needs to calm down. So he brings the player to the side and he's like, okay, buddy, breathe. You know how to play the game. Just relax. Play your game. You'll be just fine. Trying to calm him down, right? That would be the parasympathetic response, okay? So if you think of that big analogy, it's really easy to remember the divisions of the nervous system. Now, notice that all of these things are making some sort of effect on the body, right? Some sort of effect. That's why this branch is called the efferent division, because it's making an effect on the body tissue. So what's interesting is it's the opposite of the sensory. The sensory sent a signal to the brain and spinal cord. It was integrated via interneurons, so between neurons, and they decided, hey, let's make an effect. So the signal, instead of being sent towards the central nervous system, it's going to be sent away from the central nervous system and make some sort of effect on the body. So this is called efferent, which means away from the CNS, the central nervous system. Okay, hopefully all that makes sense. Now, all of the major players of this whole system are going to be the neurons, and I think I'm going to make that in a different video. I'll show you the structure and the function of a neuron and how they can get stimulated and how they can send action potentials, which are basically the signals that I am talking about here. Okay, so once again, this was an overview of the nervous system, the divisions. Hopefully this was helpful. Please drop any questions or comments below. I also have another video regarding this if you want further clarification, called The Divisions of the Nervous System. I believe I posted it somewhere in August, so feel free to watch that as well. Thanks for watching. I appreciate your time.